Okay, so this next exercise is going to include the hot air balloons project, and we're going to use a thing called smart layers, and I want to show you kind of how that works. So I want you to find one of these billboard images, this one, or this one that matches your design um, best. Sometimes people make that hot air balloons thing real long, sometimes they don't make it as long, just depending on how you followed my instructions. And even sometimes I'm just telling you, make it 19 inches, make it 21. It doesn't matter what the actual size is, just as long as you can get it to fit on one of these designs. So here's what we're going to do, is we're going to make it fit on here, but I'm also going to explain smart layers and how that kind of works. So I'm going to open Photoshop so I can show you what the final piece will look like, and we'll do just some little tricky stuff with the lights. Obviously we're going to do layer mask to have these little lights show up on the background image, and we just did a couple little effects on the image itself. So let's get to it here. I'm going to close this one out. And we're going to go to our hot air balloons file here, and what you need to do is on this top layer, go here after you're done with it, hold Command, Option, Shift, and then the letter E, and it makes a composite of all the layers. And then we need to open up one of these billboard images, and I'm going to open up this one here. It is a JPEG, so if I just double click it here, it's going to open up in preview. So what you need to do is take it, click it, drag it to Photoshop, and it'll open it up in there. I want you to make note of something. I want you to go to Image, Image Size, and note that this is a 400 pixel by 300 pixel. So pretty small. And if you remember by some of my other tutorials I might have explained, that is about 1.5 inches by 1 inch in all reality. I know right here it says a 6 by 4, 6 inches by 4 inches, but really, in reality, if you understand pixels and the way pixels per inch work in the print world, 300 is 1 inch. So this is 1 inch, that's about 1.5 inches. Okay, so really small. So this billboard's really small. Don't change it. And I want you to look at this one, the images, or the pixels on the image size. This one's 1400 by 600 pixels. So quite a bit larger. I'm going to hit OK. Or actually, I don't need to hit OK. I just need to take this right here and drag it to the billboard. And I'm going to drag it and release it and see how much larger it is than the billboard. No big deal. We're going to fix that. Right click on your hot air balloons project. Right click on that and go to Convert to Smart Object. So now it has this little icon on here. So now our hot air balloons design is a smart object. I'm going to hit Command T so I can free transform. If you can't find the edges of your bounding box, at this point you can hit Command 0 and it will zoom out so you can reach the edges of your bounding box. Let's go ahead and hold Shift and Alt and resize it so that it is about the correct size for this billboard. So something like that. Now you'll need to zoom in. You can tell it plays at this point. Zoom in so you can get a better look at this. I'm going to hit Control T again. And now I'm going to hold I'm going to hold Command, the Apple key. I'm going to hold Command so I can move that corner right into place, something like that. This one goes right down here, and this one goes over here, like that. Now you press enter to keep it engaged. And I want you to notice something here. See how it's getting choppy down here? It's because you've taken a very large image and now you've shrunk it down to fit in this 1 inch by 1.5 inch document. Okay, you took your 19 by 600 pixel object design and squeeze it into here, and it's even smaller than it was before because it's even smaller than the 1 inch 1 inch by 1.5 inch. It's even smaller. Don't worry about that for now, but it's starting to make it pixelated. But I want you to remember it is a smart object. Okay, so we can scale smart objects in Photoshop without losing too much data, even though right now we are losing some of the data. No big deal though, we're going to fix it. I'm going to turn the eyeball off here, and I'm going to use this selection tool, and I'm just going to real quickly go around the lights here. And that would be perfect on something like this if I was doing it in the real world. Oops. Gotta find the end. There it is. So now I have a selection. I'm going to go back to this layer here, and now I'm going to click Layer Mask. I'm going to invert this, Command I, and now I can see the little lights on here. I'm going to do another little tricky thing. I'm going to make it look, give it the appearance of having lights on, coming on out of these. And I'm doing that wrong. Let me hit escape to release. Okay, right here. I'm going to do another one. I have to hold shift. There we go. I'm going to hold shift. I can make another little beam out. Hold shift again. Another little beam out. Shift. Shift. So now I have a selection. I'm going to make a new layer, and we'll call this light. And we'll go to our gradient, and we're going to make our own gradient here. Okay, that one looks good. I'm going to use the one that goes from foreground to transparent. Here's foreground to background. We're going to use the foreground to transparent. Those little square things represent opacity. So we're going to take this color here, and I was going to try a yellow, but maybe that blue might work. I'm going to just leave that blue and see what happens. So now I'm going to drag and then release right here, and that is going to make a gradient for us using this color, our foreground color, fading to transparent, just like this up here that we set for our gradation. I'm going to hit Control D to deselect our marching ant trail, the selection. This looks pretty good. Depending on the blending mode you use, you can make it look more realistic. Hard light, let's see, vivid light, pin light's not bad. Probably lower its opacity some. The big trick will be the Gaussian blur. That's the magic tool that makes everything look realistic. almost a pixel worth of Gaussian blur. And when we do the next thing, we may have to fix our blur a little bit on the light, but let's take a look at this here. And that looks pretty good. At this point, it'd be a good time to save it. But I'm going to do our little magic trick here. Remember, I was talking about this being a smart layer. We turn this into a smart layer, and now we're going to take our image size here, and we're going to go ahead and make it 1,000 pixels across. Now, the one thing it's not going to do, it's not going to fix the background image. The background image, whatever pixels it is, that's what it's always going to be. So you can scale it up and you might get an appearance of it being a little bit better, but it's still going to have those same, it's still only going to have the same data that it had from the beginning, the 400 by 300 pixels. But now this one was 1900 by 600 pixels, and if we zoom in here, this one is going to look a whole lot better because it is a smart object. It's going to keep whatever resolution it had to begin with. So we scale it up, that looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to do an inner shadow. Sometimes that looks good. And I'm just going to take its distance down to 0, increase the size a little bit, something like that. That gives it usually a pretty good illusion. And the opacity, I'll reduce that just a smidge. And so that looks pretty good. And I'll just leave it something like that. So I showed you smart objects and how to free transform using the distort. You just grab a corner while you're holding the command key or control. I'll undo that. Showed you the inner shadow and layer masking again, obviously. Just some lighting effects and how to use smart objects. That concludes this video tutorial.